Speaking of the next video, Bastion. The champion arrived in Bastion to be immediately greeted by a Kyrian named Clea. This Lady Smurf was very startled to see that the way to Ouroboros had been opened, and even more startled to learn that there may be Kyrian working with the jailer. The Archon must be informed of these startling things. However, we then learned that there was only one way to gain an audience with the Archon. The champion was going to need to walk the path, a series of spiritual trials a soul known as an aspirant would undergo, in order to become an ascended, and then start their job of ferrying souls to the Arbiter. An aspirant must purge themselves of all attachment to their mortal lives, surrendering their memories. Anyone who could not complete the path would be sent to the Temple of Purity, where their negative emotions and memories would be cleansed, and anyone who outright turned away from the path would be sent to the Temple of Loyalty, where they were supposed to be gaslit or something. There were a few other temples dotted about Bastion as well, temples dedicated to wisdom, humility and courage, each with a paragon in charge. Those paragons being long ascended Kyrian who stood as the embodiment of their respective temple virtues, and made sure that everyone else upheld those virtues as well. Kinda like real insufferable people on social media. Anyway, the champions then met another individual, Pelagos, Clea's soulbind. Clea and Pelagos had undergone a ritual to unite their souls, making them both stronger and stuff. Every Kyrian underwent this process of soulbinding, as did many other denizens of the Shadowlands. And as a little aside, every single time I heard the term soulbind in Shadowlands, it basically made me think of this. But we'll probably come back to soulbinding at some point. The only other thing worth mentioning right now is that Pelagos was kinda struggling to complete his trials as an aspirant. But back to actual things happening. The champion head to the Aspirant's Crucible to commence the trials, tests of strength, stamina and spirit, as well as a bit of a memory cleanse using some soul mirrors, and we just went ahead and smashed every single one. However, rather than being granted an audience by the Archon, we were just gifted an ability instead. Calistine had shared our message about the Morsworn with the Archon, and it seemed like she pretty much just didn't believe us. Great. What now? We were then approached by Disciple Cosmos, asking for a bit of help at the Temple of Purity. The temple itself was overwhelmed by the sheer number of souls that were unable to ascend. However, as we ran around trying to help people fight their own inner conflict, the temple fell under attack. The Forsworn, Kyrians who opposed the path and were unwilling to abandon their memories, converged on the Temple of Purity, and corrupted the massive purifying Vesper bells that hung throughout. As a result, manifestations of negative emotions and memories burst forth from every bloody aspirant in the place. So we helped fight against all of those things, cleansing the place and the bells in the process. We then confronted the leader of the Forsworn, Lasonia, learning that she had once been the Hand of Loyalty, before declaring herself the Hand of Doubt. The champion, alongside the Paragon of Purity Versiphone, attempted to take Lasonia's ass, but she stunned us with a More ability and then buggered off. Not without leaving behind a fragment of her negative emotions, though. Big whoops, you might say. What the hell are we supposed to do with that? Well, Versiphone felt like we should take it to the Mnemonic Locus, memory archives within Bastion. Have a little look-see at Lasonia's memories and find out why she'd turned her back on the path. So we did, getting a bit of help from a very grumpy owl bloke. The visions of her memories outright proved that she had pledged the Forsworn to the jailer, though most of the individual souls who followed her did not know that. With that revelation though, we were finally able to capture the attention of Archon Carestia, and she acknowledged that although she had been dismissive of warnings in the past, in light of this recent attack and new evidence, it was probably time to do something about it. Somehow, these rebel Kyrians were evading Bastion's wards, and it was of the utmost importance to find out how the bloody hell they were doing that. Unfortunately, as we investigated that matter, Uther the Lightbringer showed up. In life a Paladin of Azeroth, but now a Forsworn. He disabled the ward protecting the Temple of Courage, and as a result, the jailer's allies then started to pour through a rift above that place. Surprisingly though, these attackers were not just the Morsworn or the Forsworn. There were Necrolord warriors from Maldraxxus involved as well. Necrolords were supposed to be defenders of the Shadowlands, yet here they were doing the opposite of that. The fighting was fierce. Without anima to power their constructs and forges, the Kyrian were very nearly overwhelmed. And to make matters worse, the Necrolords were seemingly harvesting Kyrian, living or dead, for some reason. One Maldraxxi necromancer even warped the Hand of Courage Thanikos into a horrific monstrous bone guard thing. But, fortunately for the people of Bastion, we were there, and we're the best at everything. Through our efforts, the enemy was forced to retreat, The Forsworn and Maldraxxus were far from defeated, but at least this current battle was now over. And with Bastion now in a state of stable if not temporary peace, we head back to Oribos, bringing news of everything that transpired and hoping that it made more sense to the Overseers than it did to us. Maldraxxus' attack on Bastion was a dire and immediate threat, so Talinara informed us that's where we were going next, to Maldraxxus, to recover information on the state of that place and bring a stop to any further violence. But before we jump into the second zone, a little bit more info on Uther the Lightbringer. As most of you will know, Uther served as a mentor to Arthas Menethil back in the day, eventually confronting the young prince after he'd fallen to darkness. That did not go well, and Uther died. And as was the case with any of the victims on the pointy end of Frostmourne, his soul was fractured, with part of his spirit being absorbed by the blade, and the rest of it going to the Shadowlands. As a paladin who had served his people, 'twas appropriate that Uther's soul was sent to Bastion. With his spirit sundered, however, he was completely and utterly incapable of completing the path and becoming ascended, despite his best efforts. Intrigued by this, his mentor, the Paragon of Loyalty Devos, had a little look-see, discovering the wound in his soul left by Frostmourne. Realising that domination magic had somehow escaped the Maw, and she took this news to the Archon, even going as far as to suggest that the path itself might be flawed. But the Eternal One dismissed all of that. The Order of the Shadowlands depended on Bastion's execution of their eternal charge. Nothing could interfere with that mission, so shut up. This did not deter Devos though. She just went ahead and granted Uther ascendancy anyway, giving him all the powers associated with that. And together, they travelled to Azeroth, to the moment of Arthas' death, grabbing its soul and chucking it straight in the Maw, bypassing the Arbiter completely. Unfortunately, even with Frostmourne shattered, Uther's soul fragment did not return to him. All the souls within the blade went directly to the Maw instead, to empower the Jailer. Uther had no idea that by being part of the Forsworn, he was actually assisting the very being who was inflicting his suffering. Silly sausage. Next, Maldraxxus. Those who thrived on battle in life continued to hone their craft in conflict here. The Primus ruled this realm, and had long ago divided it into 5 noble houses, each one with their own vital role. The House of Constructs, which valued power above all else. Many of the members of this house had twisted themselves into necromantic abominations to increase their battle prowess. And they had close ties with the House of Rituals, who also did necromancy stuff. The House of Eyes consisted of souls with cunning intellect and keen observation skills, making them the best suited to be the Shadowlands spies. The House of Plagues, where potions, poisons and disease were leveraged to craft weapons. And finally, the House of the Chosen, blacksmiths, who crafted armour and weaponry, but were also warriors who thrived in battle and did good strategy stuff. The Primus had imparted a small portion of his own life energy into the leaders of each of these houses, whom he called Margraves, and these Margraves maintained an uneasy but steady truce across the land. Any disputes were solved with armed conflict, which is the opposite of a truce, but okay. However, in more recent times, the Primus had disappeared. Being the first of the Eternal Ones to suspect that the Jailer was playing silly buggers, he travelled to the Maw to confront the guy, but never returned. Unfortunately, the Lich Kel'Thuzad took advantage of this. He convinced his House of Rituals, as well as the House of Constructs, to basically conquer the other 3 factions in the Primus' absence. Their first victim, the House of Plagues. Meanwhile, Draka, dead mother of Thrall, was also in Maldraxxus, a member of the House of Eyes, initially, serving as a spy and assassin. The Margrave of the house, Akarek, was concerned after hearing about the fall of the House of Plagues, suspecting there was a greater plot at work. So, he sent Draka on a diplomatic mission to the House of the Chosen. But, whilst on that mission, the House of Eyes was struck and toppled. The leader of the Chosen, Margrave Crexus, felt bad for the new houseless Draka, so he took her in, making her a member of the Chosen instead. And she thrived as a Baroness, proving herself both an excellent spy and a formidable warrior. Anyway, we arrived, finally, in Maldraxxus, only to find ourselves immediately in the crosshairs of the House of Rituals, Constructs and Chosen, forced to fight in a massive arena battle. But Draka swooped in and rescued us, taking us to the House of the Chosen and Margrave Crexus. He was quite happy to accept us, but we would need to succeed in a challenge first. 'Twas tradition for members of the House of the Chosen to distinguish themselves with a test of endurance. See that rock over there? It's special, go and touch it. So, we went ahead and touched a rock. However, upon touching it, we were granted a vision of the Primus, with the special rock itself shattering and revealing an unfinished blade within. Crexus was over the moon by this discovery. This was no ordinary blade. 'Twas a rune blade, and the 5 runes upon it matched those that sealed the seat of the Primus. Crexus believed that empowering these runes on the blade would perhaps open the door, and then all would be right in the world, because the seat was said to contain a vast arsenal of the Primus's greatest weapons, ensuring the Chosen's victory in this civil war. Also, we gave the unfinished blade a hilt, which immediately empowered one of the runes, so that was easy. We then travelled to the seat of the Primus, with the single empowered rune, the Rune of Ambition, transferring to the lock on the door, confirming that we were in fact achieving something. No idea how the bloody hell to empower the rest of the runes though, so Draka bade us to locate an ally that could join our cause. Lady Vash, a Naga who had also served in the House of Eyes. An individual that we, the champion, had killed, but she'll probably be okay with that by now, right? That was a long time ago. We soon located Lady Vash, and she did indeed agree that she and her forces would join the cause, but for a price. She wanted the head of the Lich Morbatan of the House of Rituals, who had been instrumental in the fall of the House of Eyes. So we did that, luring Morbatan out with an intricate plot, and then taking his ass. And guess what? Taking part in all of that cunning and crafty stuff empowered another rune. The Rune of Guile. Huzzah! Everything is empowering runes. Draka then directed us to the House of Plagues. Scouts had recently reported activity at that fallen necropolis. Perhaps there was still some survivors mooching about. Venturing to the place, we discovered a half-mad plague deviser called Marileth, unhinged with grief, and the weight of all that had transpired. See, when the Primus went missing, Marileth had suspected betrayal on the horizon, so he secretly started to concoct a potion in order to protect his Margrave, Stradama. But he'd been unable to complete it before the fall of his house, so he was now kind of wandering about in complete denial, pretending everything was fine, asking us to assist him in finishing his potion. And we did, because we're not qualified at all to treat a psychotic break through grief, so we just enabled his delusions instead. Worked out kinda well in the end though, because finishing the potion earned us the Rune of Insight. It also provided an opportunity for Marileth to get a little bit of closure. Margrave Stradama was indeed gone, but the potion did manage to summon her essence back long enough for her to urge him to forgive himself. And he just went ahead and carried on being in complete denial afterwards, so pretty sure he's a lost cause. Next, Vyraz, the other Baron of the House of the Chosen, requested that we join in the attack against the House of Constructs. But upon entering the battle, we very quickly realised that we were outmatched. We were not going to be able to enter the Constructs' holdings directly. However, there was a disgusting sneaky way in. Posing as a dead body, we managed to get ourselves taken into the Construct stronghold via their grisly body banks. Once inside, we fought our way through and made a grim discovery. The reason the Maldraxxi had been taking Kyrian during the battle in Bastion was that they were harvesting them for parts, using those parts for their constructs, as well as augmenting themselves. Even more evidence that the House of Constructs was behind the attack in Bastion then revealed itself. A soul-infused construct of Kyrian flesh. But we managed to take control of that abomination, and then used it to blast our way out of the stronghold, killing one of their barons, Halis, in the process. And in doing so, we managed to empower the 4th rune, the Rune of Might. Draka then escorted us back to Crexus, but we arrived to find the House of the Chosen in chaos. Margrave Crexus had been slain, and Vyraz was gravely wounded. The House of Constructs had attacked in our absence, apparently. Both Draka and Vyraz then argued about what the best course of action would be, with Draka believing now more than ever that we needed to open the seat of the Primus. But Vyraz disagreed. We need to reinforce our numbers with the most powerful warriors, and the Baron had one particular warrior already in mind. Before Draka had joined the House of the Chosen, there was another Baron who had preceded her, lost in battle and taken to the moor. Vyraz reasoned that since the champion had already escaped the moor once, perhaps we could go back there and then escape again. Seemed legit, so we head back to Oribos post-haste. Before departing for the Jailer's Realm though, Bolvar handed us the Amulet of the Horseman. 'Twould aid us in locating Darian Mograine, who we'd left behind in the moor. And in turn, he would probably be useful in the search for this yet-to-be-revealed for dramatic effect Baron of the Chosen as well. Shortly after entering the moor, we found and rescued Darian from a moor-sworn cage, but unfortunately, the trail for our true target was pretty cold. However, we then encountered a broker, Venari, who actually lived here in the moor. With Venari's help, we did manage to locate the Baron at Perdition Hold, a little bit shocked to discover that it was Darian's father, Lord Alexandros Mograine, the OG wielder of the Ashbringer. What an exciting cameo that everyone cared about. After attuning the Waystone, so that Darian and Alexandros could use it, we returned to Oribos, at which point, Alexandros shocked us once again. Baron Vyraz was a bloody traitor. 'Twas he that had sent the Ashbringer to the moor, and had no doubt assumed that we would fail in our attempt to rescue him. Mr. Mograine was certain that Viraz himself had murdered Crexus, and that news made Draka absolutely furious. She ordered Alexandros and us to go and immediately confront the treacherous bastard, while she went off to rally the rest of the troops for battle. So, we head back to the House of the Chosen, demanding that Viraz show himself and fight, and in doing that, we empowered the final rune, the Rune of the Relentless. However, as we attempted to take Viraz's ass, the coward went ahead and called guards forward to fight and die on his behalf, and we very quickly became outnumbered. But Draka swooped in and rescued us, again, informing us that the seat of the Primus itself was now under siege. Whilst allied Maldraxxi forces held back the more aligned ones, Draka took us to the door of the seat, urging us to raise the now fully empowered Runeblade and open the way. So we did, and as the doorway opened, the voice of the Primus rang out. The giant monumental statue that stood over the seat then crackled with magic, and boof, laser beams. Viraz and the enemy forces had no choice but to cheese it, else be completely decimated. Inside the seat, we found a statue of the Primus over a stone altar, with a runeblade-shaped slot carved into the stone. And since we're so smart and handsome, we figured that riddle out immediately, sliding the blade into the slot. An echo of the Primus then appeared, speaking out once again. The Eternal One had indeed realised that the jailer had turned his chains into a weapon, and had created this little message just in case he failed in his attempt to stop the bloke. 'Twas imperative that a worthy champion unite the remaining Eternal Ones, prevent the jailer from reaching the sepulchre. The uniting of the Eternal Ones was especially important, because only together had they managed to defeat the jailer in the past. Which kinda makes you wonder why he ventured to the moor by himself, and confronted the jailer alone. But with that, the second Shadowlands zone was complete. Draka instructed us to return to Oribos, deliver the Primus' warning, but also let them know that the armies of Maldraxxus would no longer be attacking any other Afterlives. Draka, however, would be staying behind to lead the Undying Army, so bye-bye, Draka. Upon returning to Oribos, though, we discovered even more people had decided to visit the Shadowlands. Kalia Menethil and High Lord Bolvar's daughter, Talia Fordragon. Talia was attempting to persuade her father to use the shards of the Helm of Domination to peer into the moor, hoping to discover the fate of those still trapped within. Bolvar was very reluctant to do this though, really did put him at quite a bit of risk. If the jailer sensed his presence, Bolvar's mind could be destroyed, or worse, dominated, and that wouldn't end well for any of us. But, Talia argued, yeah, but it's my perception that you abandoned me as a child, so do as I say. So he did. And I don't know if we're supposed to like Talia or not, but I certainly don't after that display of main character syndrome. Although we did not see our imprisoned friends in the subsequent vision, we did hear the anguished cries of both Jaina and Thrall, and we also witnessed a little brain trust meeting between the jailer and Sylvanas. Apparently the jailer already knew that we'd opened the seat of the Primus, even though we'd only just done that. So Bolvar very quickly withdrew and stopped peering because the jailer just immediately finds stuff out, apparently. Good guy's got eyes everywhere. After that, Talinara bade us to visit Ardenweald in an attempt to talk to the Winter Queen and share the Primus' warning. So that's where we went next, Ardenweald. As we arrived, a fairy named Lady Moonberry met with us. An audience with the Winter Queen was a big ask, but Lady Moonberry was willing to assist us if we assisted her first. So we did, with a bunch of random crap. But in doing so, we learned a couple of things. This particular realm had been uniquely harmed by the anima drought. In brighter times, spirits would enter wild seeds, and the denizens of Ardenweald, the Night Fae, would tend to them, with anima offerings from the Dream Trees. But with no anima flowing to the place, the groves of Ardenweald had been decimated. The wild seeds had either died, starved, or, in extreme cases, had their essence taken to sustain the heart of the forest, the giant tree at the centre of the realm. Both the Night Fae and the Winter Queen herself had been forced to make heartbreaking, impossible choices. Also, the nearby dwelling Heartwood Grove was said to be culled, its anima reclaimed for the heart of the forest, with all but about 3 of its wild seeds left to wither. Eventually, we arrived at another grove, Tir Naval, at which point we received some welcome news. The Winter Queen would soon come to bless this grove, once preparations had been made. So, we eagerly lent our hands towards readying the place, clearing starved wildlife, retrieving stolen anima from Spriggans, and infusing wild seeds with anima as well. After that, we accompanied some Dreamweavers to check out how tending wild seeds works, during which we bonded with a special wild seed, one that had arrived shortly before the anima drought began. The spirit within the seed's dreams appeared to be filled with nightmares, and the Fae had taken to calling it the Dreamer. Wonder who that could be. However, just as we finished preparations, a bunch of panicked Night Fae arrived. Ahead of its culling, Heartwood Grove had been invaded by masked Fae. In fact, masks had just started appearing on Fae they knew. Masks which seemed to possess them, causing them to attack their own and start stealing anima. We rushed back immediately and repelled these masked invaders, but the Heart of the Grove, another special type of seed, which contains all the anima harvested in a grove, was taken. And even after locating this Heart of the Grove, we were too late. It was drained and destroyed by one of the mask wearers. We head back to Tir Naval to share that bad news, only to find the Winter Queen was just now arriving. However, the Eternal One blessed the grove and then buggered off immediately before we could say anything. So, Lady Moonberry then suggested that we help out with even more random things, to ease the Winter Queen's burden, and then perhaps she would have the time to talk to us. First, we helped the Wild Hunt, defenders of Ardenweald. They were in pursuit of the mysterious masked Fae, as well as the Blighted, another new foe to the realm of Ardenweald. Doing this, we met a Sylvan named Arelon, who had joined the hunt after his home had fallen, and we also encountered the Blighted, realising that they were in fact a sect of the Drust. The masks possessing the Fae had originated from them as well. Once again, we returned to Tir Naval with that new revelation, but the grove was now in chaos. The special wild seed that we'd bonded with had become so distressed that it was projecting its nightmares into reality. So we ran around taking nightmare asses. We were then informed that the Dreamer Wild Seed required a much higher level of care it could receive at the Hibernal Hollow. So we head there, and learned of a ritual that would allow the champion to share the Dreamer's terrors and help her overcome them. But we would require a lot more anima to power said ritual, at which point, Arelon suggested that we take the fight to the Blighted, and take back the anima that they had hoarded from the Night Fae. So, we head to Arelon's dead grove, Tir na Noch, discovering that its former dormant Heart of the Grove was now jam-packed full of anima, stolen from across the realm. Our companions assisted in holding the swarming Blighted off, whilst we stole the heart back, escaping with the help of Lady Moonberry. Back at the Hollow, using the anima we'd just obtained, the ritual began, and we beheld the Dreamer's nightmares, recognising them and the soul within the Wild Seed very quickly. It was Ysera, aspect of the Green Dragonflight. Unfortunately, Xavius' corruption, and us having to kill her, haunted her still. We did manage to soothe her, but Ysera's dreams drew the Drust to our location, hell-bent on retrieving that which was stolen from them, which they'd stolen in the first place. Although we did manage to fend off these forces, Ysera's Wild Seed was mortally wounded during the battle. The only chance to save her now was to appeal directly to the Winter Queen. So, literally every person we've assisted along the way joined us in a very drawn-out and dramatic walk to the Heart of the Grove. At which point, earnest pleas from Lady Moonberry and Arelon managed to persuade the Winter Queen to help us, with the Eternal One granting some of her own essence to heal the Wild Seed. Ysera then burst forth from the seed, reborn anew, but she was now bound to the realm of Ardenweald, unable to return to the mortal realms. She was, however, still grateful, having been saved from oblivion. And that was it. The Winter Queen then listened to our warning about the jailer, at which point she told us that this great tree desperately needed anima if it was to survive and keep the jailer imprisoned within the maw. Anima that Ardenweald certainly did not have. We must go to the realm of Revendreth, speak to its ruler, Sire Denathrius. His realm was masterful at extracting anima, and he would certainly be willing to help us if he knew of our need. Right? And I shall leave this video there. I know this is going to make me sound like an asshole, but these sections of the book are particularly poorly written, unfortunately. Literally every fibre of my being got to this part of the script and just went, nope,